good evening, everyone. Again, thank you for joining. Again, we'll start with a short mindful breathing exercise. And the purpose of my life. And the benefit to help them to overcome the cause of all their problem and suffering. And help them to achieve happiness. And to be able to help with our we actualize
Really, it's interesting.
and to do that, I must continue to study and put into practice whatever I study and learn as much as possible in my everyday life. For that very reason, I'm going to listen. And may it become a condition to achieve fully awakened state. Great. Okay.
Praise the Shakyamuni Buddha. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent
Destroyer,
glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ever devout homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms atoms, in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. Part of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling on Mass of Vulture's Mountain in Rajgriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhists who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as true, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoiced. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharivattiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Short mandala offering. Sajipuki Jungshi Mento Taking refuge in venerating bodhicitta once in English and twice in Tibetan. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Choram Soke Choknam La Janchu Baju Dani Gyapsuchi Dagi Chuningi Peso Namgi Drola Penchir Sangye Jubashu Sangye Choram Soke Choknam La Janchu Baju Dani Gyapsuchi Dagi Chuningi Peso Namgi Jola Penchir Sangye Jubashu.
Angye duje nirone, tawa tamche pangpeche, tampe chuni tunjebe, kodam de la cha sa lo. So I think we completed out to verse number 27 last week, where it explained that even though everything is dependent arisings, and even though everything is empty of inherent existence or intrinsically existing from the beginningless lifetime, beginningless time, from the but due to our previous imprint and not realizing the ultimate truth, and there is appearance, intrinsically existence of the objects. But even though there is appearance of that in reality, that is not how the thing exists. So there is a total contradictions between the appearance and the way it exists. And therefore, we have to understand and realize that everything is like illusions, and not believing that appearance. And by not believing that appearance, therefore, not perceiving the thing to exist the way it appears as a inherently or intrinsically existence. So that is where. And then verse number now, we go to 28. Through this very fact, I understand well the statement that what you have taught. So here Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, having using reason and logics. When you examine and when you analyze with the reason and logics, then now I'm understanding, the statement that Buddha you taught about emptiness and dependent arisings. Now understand what emptiness means. Emptiness means dependent arisings. What dependent arising means, emptiness. That fact that you have taught, now I'm able to understand a little better with the reason logic. Who's open and who challenge you cannot find fault that accord with the reasons. And even though there are some who try to challenge Buddha's, this teaching of emptiness and dependent arising, even though there are some who try to refute, negate, and challenge you, but if you really use your own mind with the reason and logics, those negations, those refutations, those challenges, cannot really challenge you. It doesn't has really strong basis, reasonable basis to really challenge those the teaching on emptiness dependent arisings, especially dependent arisings. Why is this so? Because by declaring this, by declaring that, the meaning of emptiness as dependent arising, the meaning of dependent arising as emptiness, by declaring this, chances for reifications and denigrations, so reifications is, dodo is viewing or apprehending, even though things do not exist inherently, but apprehending, grasping as inherent existence. And denigration is even though, there is things exist on relative level, on conventional level, through appearance, but receiving and grasping that they do not exist at all. So, and such reification and denigration towards things seen and unseen are made most remote. Such two extremes are eliminated towards things seen and unseen. So here, seen and unseen, things seen mean I don't know in English, evidence objects. Unseen is hidden objects. So generally, in Buddhist science of studies, they explain all the things of phenomena into three categories, mainly two categories, and then one category is divided into two. So that is one object, obvious or evidence objects, that which means ordinary beings can see with their direct consciousness, this sense consciousness. So for example, this cup is evidence or obvious objects because my eye consciousness can perceive it directly. Same with the sound, nose, and so forth. That is the seen object. Unseen here is hidden objects. Hidden objects are that that you have to use reasoning logic to understand that, because you cannot see with your sense perception directly. For example, the subtle impermanent. The impermanent nature of this cup changing moment by moment. We cannot see with our direct perception, with our eyes consciousness. It's not so obvious and evident. So then you have to use reasoning logic. Maybe nowadays, maybe with technology, maybe you are able to see a little bit of that, but otherwise our naked eyes cannot perceive that. And so it is a hidden object because you have to use reasoning logic to understand that. And so that within the unseen. And then the most hidden object is, and then you go even more than that, not only, the most subtle understanding of karma, more subtlety of karma is the most hidden objects. Karma itself general is a hidden object, but the most subtle karma, which means if I'm experiencing, let's say, some experience of my karma from the past, to be able to understand when did I create that cause, to when, where, how, each of those very subtle details is very, not only hidden, is a very extremely hidden objects. And to that you need, depending on the reasoning of scriptural evidence. So that is what are made most remote. Okay. And also, like for example, in the Buddha's teachings, Buddha explained about, if you practice generosity, in the futures, as a karmic result, you will have wealth. If you practice moral discipline, as a result, you have a higher rebirth. If you practice patience, as a result, karmic result, that you will have a, and good friends, families, and very attractive and so forth. So and glories from practice of very glories from the practice of joyous effort and so forth. So those, those are the most subtlety of karma, and that which means most hidden objects. And so for that, we need the reasoning of scriptural evidence, because without that, it is not easy to understand from just the general reasoning and logic. Through this path of dependent origination, the rationale to your speech being peerless, convictions arise in me also that your others' words are valid too. So that is where, as it is mentioned before, through this path of dependent origin, by understanding the dependent origin as a meaning of emptiness, such teachings and such understanding, such path, and is the peerless, because if you use, it's not just belief, it's not based on belief. It's not just because Buddha said and you just believe it because he's a Buddha, enlightened, but it is something that you can use your own reasoning and logic. And you can understand that through your reasoning logics. You don't have to believe because for the sake of belief, but it's something that you can analyze, something you can investigate. And the more you analyze, the more investigation you do, the more clear and clear it becomes how everything is dependent origin. The more you analyze, the more deeper analysis you do, the more deeper investigation you do, the more and more convictions you have, the more and more understanding it leads to that conclusions, how everything is dependent origin, how everything is empty of independent or inherent existence. And based on that, the Buddha's teachings on, the true truth, ultimate truth, and the conventional relative truth. Dependent origin is the relative truth, and emptiness is the ultimate truth, the appearance and the emptiness. So when the more you analyze, and that is the reality or the fact or the science of the way things exist. The more you because of that, on basis level, on reality, because there's true truth, so therefore there's two paths, the path of method and wisdom. Because there's ultimate reality or truth, there's a wisdom that relies or understands that ultimate truth, the emptiness. Because there is the conventional reality, therefore there is the method, the practice of method, the path of method. Because there is conventional reality, therefore there is suffering sentient beings. Because there is sentient beings, therefore you need to develop compassion to those suffering sentient beings. Therefore, you need to cultivate loving kindness to those suffering sentient beings because they exist on conventional level or relative level. And so through that, then you develop loving kindness, compassion, the method, because there is a conventional reality or relative reality. And because of that too, then there is two paths, the path of wisdom and method. Because there is path of wisdom and method, therefore there is two resolve, the two form of Buddha, the two kayas. Through the wisdom, then you achieve Dhammakaya, wisdom body. Through the method, then you achieve the Rupakaya or the form body. And through that, that is how one can achieve. So all these are based on this very path of dependent origin. Dependent path of origin. So if you analyze, then you begin to see all this possible. You begin to see enlightenment is possible. It's not just because Buddha said and you just believe, but you see why it is possible. Why it is possible to achieve the Buddha of two kaya, because there's two paths that lead to that. How is that two path possible? Because on basic level, there's two truth. And those two truth is something that you can analyze, you can investigate. You don't have to believe. And the more examination, more investigation you do, the more you have more stronger understanding or conviction about that. And so that, because of that, because of that, therefore conviction arises in me also that others would by the two. So therefore, this is, once I have conviction on that, then, some of the teaching that Buddha gave on such as karma, and especially the subtlety of karma, even though I cannot use my reasoning at the moment, that way I can use on this. But when it comes to the main point of Buddha's teachings on the path and the true reality and all of that, and all this can withstand all the reasoning and logics, examination, analysis. Now I can have conviction on some others that maybe I might not be able to do the same kind of analysis at the moment, but Buddha has said that, and there's no reason for him to tell lie. There's nothing for him to gain by lying on that issue. And when it comes to the main point of the whole Buddha's path, you can prove with your reasoning logics. And so some other issues, such as subtle karma, then even though I might not be able to use same reasoning logic like I can use for the true dependent arising, true truth, so I can have convictions for that. That is what. So through that, then you begin to have conviction to the others Buddha's teaching, such as the subtle explaining subtle karma and so forth. You who speak excellently by seeing as it is. So the Buddha, who speak or teach excellently, correctly, by seeing, the both reality, conventional ultimate reality as it is. Buddha having understood or seen the true reality directly, and not only seeing, then to be able to explain and teach excellently. For those who train in your footsteps, so for those who are training in their path to follow the Buddha's path and footstep the Buddha, all the generations, especially for those all who are really following the path by really applying those teachings. Those who train in your footstep doesn't mean just believing in Buddha and just saying, I go refuge to you, but actually who really put those practice, those teaching into the practice. For those, all these generations, such as, the suffering of, aging, sickness, death, the suffering of, encountering that we do not wish, the suffering of not getting what we wish or what we want will become remote or will be, all this will cease, make it distant, no more there, cease. And not only those suffering or degenerations, as well as the cause of that, for the root of all fault will be undone, and the root of all this suffering or the faults or degeneration will also be eliminated and free completely. And so, so if we really put into the practice what we have learned from the Buddha's teachings, first we understand, we learn from study intellectually, and then once we have understanding, then trying to put into practice meditations, and then, integrate in our everyday life, if we can really do that and follow Buddha's footstep in that way, then, just like previous arhat, all the arhat has been able to free themselves from all the sufferings and the cause of all the sufferings. We too will be able to free from all the suffering and cause of sufferings. So that is what. Verse number 32. But for those who turn away from your teachings, those who negate the teachings of dependent origin and selflessness or emptiness, but who actually believe there is permanent soul or self, So those who turn away from your teachings, though they may struggle with hardship for a long time, in order to achieve liberation from the suffering, they might go through a lot of hardship, physical hardship, starvation, not eating for days, months, standing, like with one leg for months and years, jumping on fires, beating yourself as a way of purifications, and beating yourself, or jumping into the fire, or walking on the nails, and so forth. All these kind of hardships, so many different physical hardships for a long time, even though they try to do that in order to achieve enlightenment. In a long time, fault increase even more as it being called for. Instead of reducing the sufferings and achieving enlightenment, it only increase the sufferings, as though like calling for the suffering. Even though the suffering is not something you want, you are trying to get rid of suffering, but as though, bringing more suffering. Why? For they make firm the view of self, because they believe that there is a permanent, inherent existing self. So we already have innate from the past previous, we all know from the previous past karma or imprint, we already have this innate feeling or ignorance, or feeling of inherent existing self. We already have that. On top of that, now with the reason and logic, you say, well, how this self is permanent, why it is permanent, why it is inherent existing, with all kinds of different, invalid reason and logic. Then you make that the grasping of self even more stronger and stronger. Instead of destroying that, there is no inherent, even though innately we feel that way, but instead of with the reason and logic, destroying that apprehension of inherent existing self or I, you reinforce that with the invalid reason and logic. Why this self is permanent, why this self is inherent existing, and so on. And so with that reinforcement, with such invalid reason and logic, your sense of self or I become more strong and stronger. And when your sense of I, of the self, become more stronger, then it increase your attachment and aversion, anger stronger. And through that attachment, aversion, then it bring more pain, more sufferings. So that is here what it's saying. Emaho. So it is Emaho saying, wonderful kind of expressions of. It can be expression for different things, but here is kind of amazement, kind of praise, amazement. When the wise comprehend And the wise here saying those who are able to use their reason and logic, those through their using their intelligence, not just believing based on because someone said so and so on, but using your own wisdom, using your own intelligence, and through by using your own intelligent reasoning to be able to differentiate what is to be abandoned, what is to be accomplished or practiced. Such the wise comprehend the difference between those two. The difference between those two, the philosophy of non-inherently existing self and the philosophy of inherently existing self. The philosophy of permanent self and non-permanent self, and how those two different understanding of philosophy can reinforce the strong sense of self or not. And through that, whether having a strong sense of permanent and inherently existing self, or understanding of impermanent and non-inherently existing self, how it lead to stronger emotions, such as anger and attachment, or less of that. So to be able to difference between those two. If one understands, when you research reason and logic, and if someone such wise one is able to differentiate between those two, why would they not at that point revere you from the depth of your beings? When you really understand, then sense of respect, sense of refuge come through your heart to the Buddha, to you. Not just a word, but from your depth of your heart, and this here shows the unique cause of refuge. Unique cause of refuge, the refuge, that unshakable refuge, the sense of unshakable refuge, unreversible refuge, immovable refuge comes when you have this understanding of dependent arising and emptiness. Wow. This is something very special. It's when you have that understanding of dependent arising emptiness, then you begin to have experience or understanding. You see the possibility of end to the sufferings. You see the possibility of liberation, nirvana. You see liberation and nirvana, or end of the suffering, or samsara, is not some kind of just a nice, vague, ideal concept of philosophy. You feel is true and real when you have that understanding. You feel is true and real. And when you feel so real and so true, that comes from your convictions. And that convictions come through such understanding with the reason and logics. With that reason and logic, you have that understanding with convictions. When you have that, then of course, your respect, the feeling of kindness of the Buddha to show this path, the respect, kindness, and faith, and the refuge arises very strongly and from your heart. So that is what, and that is also Lama Tsongkhapa sharing his own that experience, as it will come later. That is when he really felt true, kind of immovable, unshakable refuge to the Buddha, close to the Dharma, and which is that wisdom relies on the emptiness, dependent arising. When you have that, then because that acts as antidote, you begin to see, just having that realization, now you have less grasping and your delusion starts to be less and less. You already see the effect of that realizations. You already see with your own experience, you have less anger than before. You have less attachment than before. You are less arrogant than before. You have less self-grasping. So once you have that, you already see the effect of that. Having those negative feelings less intense and less of that. And you begin to see, wow, this is the antidote. This is the remedy. It's like you have had some illness and you started to take the medicine and it started to have effect. Your, all different symptoms you have, now you started to have less and less of that. And you know that this medicine is helping. You know this medicine is the right medicine. And when you feel that, then you have conviction that medicine. Same way, then you have convictions and trust in that path, that Dharma. And when you have that conviction and trust in that Dharma, that path, that wisdom, then you begin to have more trust, confidence, faith in the Buddha who taught that Dharma, the Buddha who showed that path, the Buddha who teach you how to cultivate that wisdom, that path, that Dharma, that medicine within your mind. And when you have that faith in Buddha, then you also have more faith and trust in the Sangha, those who have cultivated that wisdom just like yourself in their heart. The Sangha community, the Sangha members who have also cultivated wisdom like yourself, you also have more trust, confidence in them. And through that, that is how you have. And so therefore, I think another prayers Lama Tsongkhapa made, may I have a strong, faith or trust and refuge in the Buddha by understanding, having assertement or having the correct understanding by the Buddha's principal teachings, the Buddha's teachings. And so that is the key, Until we develop that wisdom, our mind might be kind of doubt many of the Buddha's teachings. Buddha's talk about enlightenment, Buddha's talk about liberation, fully enlightenment, talk about end to all the suffering and all the negative emotions and delusions and obscuration. Sometimes we wonder, is possible or not? Is it true or not? And so many other teachings. But once you have that wisdom, then now it's like, you see all these advertisements. If you take this medicine, it will cure this and this. And wonderful, wow. But you are not sure whether they really have, it really affect the way they say it or not. In advertisement, they say, oh, you will reduce your health wealth, it will improve this and that. But once you started taking it, And then when you try to really see the effect of that, then you start to believe in that and the conviction in that. Same, that is when you started to apply the teachings, integrate those teachings into the path, into the practice. And when you have that kind of realizations of emptiness and dependent arising, and that is where you have, such a strong faith and trust and confidence in the Buddhas. And from the depth of your heart, that is unshakable, unmovable. So here the Lama Tsongkhapa sharing his story. Let alone your numberless teachings, let alone all your vast teachings that you have gave, such as Four Noble Truths, and then all the Bodhisattvas practice, loving kindness, true loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, and all the Bodhisattva practice of 6 perfections, 10 perfections, Taipa, 10 bhumis, and then on top of that, all the Vajrayana teachings, 2 stages and so forth, numberless teachings that you let alone all numbers teachings. Even in the meaning of small part, even you cannot have understanding and realization of all these numberless teachings, but even you have just, understanding even small part of those teachings, such as just having a correct understanding of dependent arising emptiness. This is just one part of the teachings from those numberless teachings and practice. Those who find ascertainment in a persuasive way, that bring supreme bliss to them as well, Even though, of course, if you have understanding of all those numberless teachings, and if you are able to have correct understanding, realization of that, of course, it will lead you to the supreme bliss of fully enlightenment. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about, achieving the supreme bliss of fully enlightenment. But even when you don't have all, even when you have very small understanding and realization, it's just small part of it, and even that maybe not necessarily, very intense, extensively, but even maybe kind of, roughly, in that way, still it will bring, still that is able to bring great bliss as well. And so, I think it is in Aradevas, 400 stanzas, he mentions, forget about, having a correct realization of emptiness. Even you have a doubt about emptiness, even that will shake the very root of the samsara. Even you have doubt about it, if you have correct realization, understanding, there's no doubt. But even when you have having a doubt about this emptiness, it will shake the foundation of the samsara. That will have, even that to, make your mind more calm, peaceful, blissful. And that is because the root of samsara, what is the root of samsara? As we have discussed, this ignorance, grasping truly existence, that has ruled us from the beginner's lifetime, continue to rule, is that ignorance that kind of drive our mind and that rule our experience and our existence. It's like the king that has never been challenged. It's like the leader that has never been challenged. This grasping has continued to apprehend things, everything to exist inherently. And our mind, and we never challenge that. We just believe that. We just follow it and believe that. There's appearance of inherent existence, and not only there's appearance, then our mind, the ignorance, perceive the things to exist inherently the way it appears. And that has, from the beginning of lifetime, that has been the case, and we just follow it without cautioning it. Without cautioning it. When you started have doubt on emptiness, when you talk about whether the object is inherently existing or not existing, maybe it is not inherently existing, maybe it is inherently existing. When you started have doubt, you are starting to caution and challenge that ignorance that has never been challenged. The ignorance that has never been challenged before, where we just follow it, believe it. Now, even when you have doubt, is kind of challenging it. And so when you, even with that, even with doubt, then that is where it says it shakes the very foundations of the samsara. Because it shakes the ignorance. Now ignorance is being cautioned and challenged. Of course, then if you have a correct realization, there's no doubt about that. 35, Allah's, is kind of, again, expressions of being very kind of sad, My mind was defeated by ignorance. So Lama Tsongkhapa was saying, my mind has been defeated by ignorance, and because of that, I have not understood the very essence and the core teaching of the Buddha, dependent arising emptiness. Being defeated by ignorance, so far I have not been able to, before that, I have not been able to have the correct understanding or realization of the very core of the Buddha's teaching, the very essence of the Buddha's teaching, very heart of the Buddha's teaching and practice. Though I have sought refuge for a long time, even though he said, since he was young, very young, he took refuge. Even at the age of from 4 or 5, he, under the guidance of one of his main teachers, he went to refuge, even have initiations, instructions, teachings under his care until when he was 14 or something, and under that teacher's, guidance, he sent him to the central part of Tibet to more studies. So he has had that gone for refuge for a long time, since he was very young. In such embodiment of excellence, of the Buddhas, who is embodiment of incredible excellence, of qualities, incredible qualities, I possess not a fraction of his qualities, And 36, nonetheless, before the stream of this life, flowing towards the dead has come to cease, you know. So he's saying, you know, of course, our life, day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, come closer and closer to death, you know. And so Lama Tsongkhapa was saying his life has, at this stage, you know, more than 50 years has passed by, you know, and so he's coming closer to the end. Especially at that time, you know, probably that is like 14th centuries. The lifespan might be 60s, 70s. If someone lives 70, that will be a big lifespan, you know, 60s, 70s, you know. So again, you know, is coming closer, but it has not come to the end as so far, you know. And before my life come to the end, before the death comes, that I have found a slight faith in you. Even this, I think, is fortunate, you know. So before the death come, now I've found a little bit of faith, trust, and confidence in you. Where did that trust come from? Where did that confidence come from? Where does that faith and refuge come from? It comes through understanding of dependent arising and emptiness. Even though I have gone refuge since young for a long time, but I didn't have that faith. Same refuge and faith. But now I have that little faith and refuge and trust and confidence in you because of now I've understood your teachings of the heart teachings, the essence of your teachings, the emptiness dependent arisings. And because of that, now I feel very joyful, fortunate, you know. I feel very fortunate and very happy and joyful, you know, because of that. So again, Apostle Lama Tsongkhapa sharing his story, his life experiences, but that will be same if we follow the same path, you know. At the moment, our refuge, even though we all have gone to refuge, our refuge is not strong. It's very shaky, you know. Some days we feel refuge strong, some days we doubt. Some days it's shaky, especially when things are difficult in our life, you know. When things are difficult in our life, when we have a lot of challenges, problems, sufferings, you know, sometimes our refuge becomes shaky. Our refuge becomes shaky, you know, not so strong, you know. Even though we have gone for refuge, even though we have taken refuge, you know, even though we try to develop refuge every day from the morning, but still is kind of little bit kind of unstable, little bit kind of shaky, you know, because again, we don't have that realization, that dharma, that emptiness, the dependent arising. Once you have that dependent realization or emptiness, dependent arisings, you know, then your refuge will be strong. Your faith, refuge towards the Buddha and the Buddha Dhamma Sangha will be very strong, unmovable, unshakable, you know, and that is where in some teachings, Lamde's teachings, the pattern result teachings, they talk about the four reliance, the Buddha, the teaching scriptures, and the teachers and the experience in terms of four violate, experiences. Of course, there's the violet Buddha, and through that violet Buddha, then he taught and give those teachings. And through that, then there's a violet scriptures. And through that violet scriptures, then there are those practitioners who study and practice those teachings. And through that, they have experience and they become the teachers, the lamas, gurus. From guru, then we receive those teachings, instruction, and advices. And having put those instruction and practice, advice into our practice, then we develop spiritual experience, violet experience. In terms of coming, it is that. But in terms of having a conviction, it starts the reverse way. First you practice. When you practice, when you apply and when you practice, then you started to have the spiritual realizations. When you have spiritual realizations, then you have conviction in that spiritual realizations. Once you have that conviction, that spiritual realizations, the conviction, the trust, faith in that realizations, then you develop a strong faith and trust in your guru who help you to develop that experience. Then you started to really feel the kindness of the guru, the respect for the guru, conviction in the guru, because of that guru's advice, instruction, and support and help. Now you have these incredible spiritual experiences. And once you have that kind of, incredible faith and confidence, trust in your guru, then you also develop trust, confidence, and faith in the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, scriptural teachings, and those from where your guru learned, from that he or she learned, and by putting practice, they develop, and that is what they share to us. And through that, we are able to develop that. And once you have the trust and faith in that Dharma, then you have the trust and faith in the Buddha, who share that teachings. So therefore, so that becomes very important, If we don't have those spiritual realizations, even as a glimpse, even we don't have a realization, if you don't have the glimpse of that, then, everything's become a little kind of shaky. For some days, some months, some years, we feel like, these teachings, this path is something that connects with me. I like it. It makes sense. It seems to have kind of faith, convictions, and all of that. But after some time, it fizzles out. After a few months, sometimes few weeks, after some months, some years, then you lose interest in your study, your practice, everything, and you just fizzle out. And that is because we don't have that experience. If you have experience, that wouldn't be the case. If you have the experience, the spiritual experience, or even a glimpse of that, your faith will increase more and more. Your enthusiasm in your study and practice enthusiasm and interest will grow stronger and stronger. And so therefore, in order to have that experience, studying and whatever you study, learn, putting into the practice is so crucial. Not just trying to gain intellectual understanding. Of course, we need to get that intellectual understanding in order to put that into practice. But you have to put it into practice to have such better result, It is like, if you want to cook something delicious, healthy, delicious, and that can not help healthy and delicious, and that can also, eliminate your suffering or hunger. Of course, you need to learn how to cook that way, how to cook healthy and all of that. But it's not enough learning how to do that. Then you have to start cooking, and be good at that. Similarly, that is what we learn, and then one we understand, put it into practice. And if you are able to practice, so then we can also then develop such strong faith and refuge, conviction in the Buddha. 37, among teachers. There is two ways it could be among teachers or among teachings. In Tibetan, it's same word, Pyomba. Pyomba means it could refer to the Buddha, the teachers, or it could mean teachings. So normally, it depends on, in one of the commentaries, it doesn't actually refer to the teacher, it actually refers to the teachings. But I don't think maybe there's a lot of contradictions. It could be among teachings, the teaching of dependent originations, is the excellent. Or among teachers, the teacher of dependent origination, as it is translated here, is the excellent. Among the wisdom, the knowledge of dependent originations is the most excellent. Because it is that wisdom knowledge that understands the dependent origin is the one that can cut the very root of all the suffering and all the delusions. And therefore, since that wisdom knowledge can cut the very root of all the sufferings, therefore, that's the most excellent wisdom. And also, the teaching on that is the most supreme, the most excellent. Also, the teacher who teaches that is most supreme and excellent. You who are most excellent, and because of that, you are the most excellent, referring to Buddha, like the king in the world. Most supreme, the most excellent, because you know this perfectly well, because you understand and realize the emptiness and dependent arising, correctly, unmistakably, know the others who doesn't accept everything is dependent arising, who doesn't accept everything is empty of inherent existence, So there is no way they can realize that, because their view is that not everything is dependent arising, not everything is empty of inherent existence. And so that being their view, philosophy, there's no way of having a realization of non-inherent existence, emptiness, and how everything is dependent origin. So yeah, maybe today I might stop here. Has any questions?
We do have a question online, Geshe.
Yeah.
Amanda, can you unmute and ask your question, please?
So, Geshe Sherab,
Yes.
so the grasping at the sense of self, is a very strong habit. And if you are trying to change that, then you need to replace it with something.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing you can replace it with is a dependence on refuge. So I have a question on refuge. Lama Tsongkhapa Rinpoche, he said that we're surrounded by the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. And I wanted to know if that is the same as the merit field.
Can you, what Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, what?
Yes, Lama Tsongkhapa Rinpoche, he once said that we are surrounded by the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to know, is that the same thing as the merit field?
Well, you can say they are merit field or refuge field. More likely to be refuge field. Of course, sometimes we use different words for different purpose, but it's the same. Sometimes as a way of engaging in the practice to take refuge, then we call refuge field. But sometimes it's same objects, but for using that objects to create merit and to purify, then we call it merit field. Because by using that objects as a way to create merit and also a way to purify as a way to practice the 7 limb practice, which are part of that. So for that we call merit field, but for going for refuge, then we call refuge field. And so you can say both. In generally, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are both refuge field and merit field. Yeah.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the refuge field, so they've taken all these vows, and they've taken all these vows, and they all come from a long time ago. They've been in the refuge field for a long time, and they've been maintaining these vows for a long time. And is that correct?
Well, it depends. There are Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who have been Bodhisattva for a long time, or Buddhas for a long time, and there are Bodhisattvas who just developed Bodhicitta last week or this month, or maybe just today. Maybe there might be one Bodhisattva who just developed Bodhicitta today, and he is a new Bodhisattva. Same, there will be a Buddha who just achieved Buddha today, or last week or last month. So they have been Buddha for only very recently. But there are a lot of other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who has been for a long time. So you cannot say, we cannot all in the same categories. Some Buddhas, Bodhisattvas has been for eons. Some of them, hi, and we have some bodhisattvas who have been 1,100 years, and some just recently. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? If not, then we do the dedications. If there is questions, still we have time. Again, one more questions. So maybe we can do dedications.
Gewa dinur
Duta Lama Tsongkhapa Drugyone Do Chika Malupa Sala Gwebarsho
Gancho
Sencho Rinpoche Make Pana Ke Guchi Gewa Nyamba Me Payang Gong Le Gong Tu Pe Sho
Gangri
Rawe
Rawe
Kowe Shinkam De Tendan Dewa Malu Chungwe Ne Chenre Tenwa Tenze Gaso Ye Shape Site Patu Tenkyo Chi.
Prayer for the swift return of Lama Tsongkhapa Geshe. Fearless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Vajayaka Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the most precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You are the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the soul gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss! Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Good night. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Geshe.